What's up, everybody? I'm Metal Nick,
I'm Jeff Grindstoffer.
and welcome to episode number 75 of Vinyl Bang. Jeff, do you want to introduce today's guest?
Today we have our very special guest. We have Danny Lilker. Everybody, Dan Lilker. Dan, as you may know, is from such bands as Stormtroopers of Death, Nuclear Assault. His newest project, Tales of Aetherion. The man has been in so many bands. It would take an hour to go through everything he's been through. So we will just go ahead and cut through the introduction and go ahead and get right into having Danny talk about some of his favorite albums.
Cool. Hello.
Thank you for being with us today, Dan.
You're very welcome.
Danny, you and I were talking last week about a few bands that you are a fan of. Why don't you tell us about like some Judas Priest?
So yeah, I mean, since this is about vinyl, this is more about a trip down memory lane for me because honestly, we don't even have a turntable in the house. But obviously the format, I'm kind of old. So when I was out buying music, when I was buying metal in the late 70s, early 80s and all that, and the mid 80s, it was all in the vinyl format. So I figured that would work for this because, like I said, it'll be a little trip down memory lane. So
sure.
With Judas Priest in particular, when I got into them, there was a record store right down the street where I lived in Bayside, Queens called Moonshine Records. And I remember that would have been when British Steel came out because this is like 79, 80. And then, excuse me, I found a lot more record stores that had a lot more metal selection in like Manhattan because I grew up in Queens. Like I said, there was a couple of cool, more dedicated metal stores in Queens and then Slip Disc on Long Island. So basically, yeah, when I got into metal, I would go out and get these records. So I got British Steel because that had just been released. And then I went back and tried to find all their old back catalog, which at the time, the first two, Rock and Roll and Sad Wings of Destiny, were very hard to find. So I would call up all these record stores and say, do you have all the Judas Priest records? And I remember one particularly cocky employee when I called up and said, what Judas Priest records do you have? And the guy was like, all of them. I'm like, oh. So then you have Rock and Roll and Sad Wings of Destiny. Made the poor schmuck go look and admit that they did not, in fact, have them because they weren't available then. But yes, the point is that I went out and got these records, and obviously it was a huge influence on my whole musical upbringing and everything. So Judas Priest was a big part of that, definitely. And then sticking with like old metal, when I graduated junior high school, because when I went to school in New York, what it was is that junior high school was 7th through 9th grade, and then high school was 10th through 12th. So when I graduated 9th grade, I got myself a present, and I went down to the Village. I forgot exactly what store it is now, and bought myself a copy of Black Sabbath's Greatest Hits. And this is actually predates this Judas Priest stuff. And I brought that home, and that just changed everything because I'd heard about them, and I wanted to check them out. And that was quite an eye opener. But and then just like old punk rock. But I don't want to get ahead of you guys if you have any other questions about that.
No. I mean, I love hearing stories about how you were discovering music and just hearing you tell stories at all. It's amazing to have you on. But
well, thank you. Yeah, and they're definitely stories because it's stuff I got to remember because you're talking 40 years plus.
Sure.
But, all right. Actually, I got one if you don't mind.
No.
Two different people on our show have broke out this particular Brutal Truth pressing that are like several different sized vinyls. Do you want to talk about that at all, or like the process of like who came up with that idea and how all that went down?
That would, I assume, be the Need to Control record, which was our second record, and that was on Earache. And somehow we convinced Dig from Earache that it would be a really cool format, whatever, just collector's item. I think our drummer, Rich, at the time really worked on them and convinced him to not only do normal vinyl, but also break up the record into 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9-inch records and have that in a box set. which I have somewhere downstairs. And yeah, that was just kind of the thing where it's a cool collector's item. And I don't know. I've never actually played them myself. I don't know if you need like the right adapter to play one of them or something like that to play a 5-inch record, which is obviously smaller than your typical 7-inch record. But yeah, that was just a cool thing that I believe that our drummer thought of and hassled Dig from Earache about. And yeah, I know a lot of people who said, "Yeah, man, I got that box set," because I don't think it's available anymore. It has been for ages. So that was just, I don't know, a little marketing thing. I hate to sound cynical, but yeah, that was just a interesting little idea to make that release more interesting, really.
And what a packaging idea. I mean, that is just awesome.
I love
Awesome
the
concept. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely was, and I'm proud to be part of that release with that unique format.
absolutely.
Mhm.
Cool. Now, again, whenever you and I were talking last week, we were talking about hardcore. Like, is
Mhm.
there anything in particular that you wanted to bring up in the hardcore genre, or any bands or anything that were really like, you know, important to you? Or
Oh yeah, I mean, tying all this in with vinyl again. Yeah. There used to be a store in Greenwich Village, New York, called Bleecker Bob's, and that's where I got almost all of my hardcore vinyl. So when I got into hardcore, because I was into thrash metal, and then I would go to CBGB shows down in New York City because I live in Rochester, New York now. But where I grew up, I would go to all these shows, see all these killer bands, and then I could go find all their records. So I would say it was mostly the fast, intense stuff because that became very influential for Nuclear Assault. So that would be, the bands everybody remembers, the crossover type bands like DRI and COC, and then there was great New York bands like Agnostic Front, Cro-Mags, Murphy's Law,
sure,
good European hardcore, just like all that noisy Swedish stuff, like Anti-Cymex and all that. But mostly it was cool because, like I said, I would be able to go to hardcore matinees and you could either buy their records right there if they had a little merch stand, or you would go to Bleecker Bob's. And one thing, I remember going out and, buying Minor Threat records and all that stuff like that, like just good old hardcore, I didn't give a shit if they were straight edge. They're not going to tell me to stop drinking beer. But what I remember is dudes coming in when I was buying those records, like dudes who had been into metal and now weren't into metal anymore and they were into hardcore now. And so they were like trading in their Slayer records for, Minor Threat and Misfits. And I'm thinking that's crazy. Unless you're like, scraping up money to eat, and this is a financial reality that you have to sell those records to afford these ones. In that case, you shouldn't be buying records; you should be buying food. But the point being that I'd see these dudes doing that, and I go, why can't you just have both? Why do you have to not have Slayer records just because you're into hardcore now? Because a lot of people were just kind of insecure and chameleon like, which I noticed. And once they got into something, they pretended they weren't into whatever they were into before, which was quite transparently. I mean, I would just see people come to CBGBs, and all of a sudden they'd have fucking bald heads. Bald heads. I didn't say that very well. When I knew they were just long-haired metal heads from Jersey or something like that, and they would go, "When are you going to cut your hair off, dude?" I'm like, "I'm not going to cut my hair off. I like hardcore. I fucking look like it to do so.
right, right.
But yeah, so hardcore, all those, obviously, like I said, at my age and the format I was getting then was just tons of vinyl. So some of it got pretty rare and expensive too. I mean, Misfits
Sure.
Earth AD, fucking super. I think I sold one of those for like $2,500 or something.
Wow.
Wow.
Well, I think at the time we needed money. We had some sad business going on. One of our cats was real sick, and we needed money for animal hospital shit, or else I wouldn't have done that. But yeah, so you buy these records, and then 25 years later, people are like, "Oh, you got this pressing of that," and I didn't think about pressings. I just bought a record because I wanted to hear it.
Right, right. Absolutely, and that's a situation I think we've all been in. You know, where we have expensive records, and just something comes up like, okay, I hate to do it, but got to sell the record. I mean, it's just part of life. But hell yeah, hell yeah. So couple other bands, just real quick, because we need to wrap this up. Kiss. Any stories about Kiss?
Yeah, I mentioned Kiss the Originals. I messed up and didn't put the plural when I emailed you, but Kiss the Originals was they took the first record, Hotter Than Hell and Dressed to Kill, and put them all bundled them all into this one release where the sleeves of the records that were inside the packaging had the album covers as opposed to like the cardboard album covers. And it was just I don't know why they did it. Maybe it was they made them all three of them, like cheaper to buy three at once. It was just some different type of release, but I just remember that being convenient because instead of buying three records, I just bought this one and had the first three records on it. And yeah, this obviously would have been even earlier. I mean, this probably would have been like 77, 76 or something because the first concert I ever saw was Kiss when I was 13 in 1977. So this is even going further back because this is even before there was even much metal to get into. I guess Motorhead was around. I got into them later. That's another Ace of Spades being another extremely important record I was turned on to. But with the Kiss record, yeah, the records, I should say. That was just a simple way of getting all three of those records. And it was just one of the first releases I ever got. It's like when I got into bands like Rush, I would go out and buy like six of their records. I mean, I don't know if this is like really old, but some of these stores I remember had some sticker on it, the nice price, and it was like $4.99, $5.99 for a vinyl. You think about that now, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't 180 gram and double vinyl and gatefold. Well, maybe some of them were gatefold because that was Rush Records in the 70s. But I guess my point is that if I got into a band, if I could afford it, I would try to scoop up all their vinyl and, go home and play it or play my sister's Beatles and Rolling Stones records before that. But I didn't really own those, so that doesn't count as like collecting vinyl or anything. But yeah, so Kiss, and then I also mentioned the Ramones because I was into the Ramones in junior high school before I even really knew metal. And I remember getting Rocket to Russia and just being blown away just by just the primitive heaviness of it, just all the down picking and everything like that. And
Sure.
yeah, definitely an influence too. Didi Ramone playing really hard on bass. So yeah, that's the Ramone story and the Kiss story, I guess.
Awesome, dude. Just to find out what made Danny, man. This is awesome to hear these stories and your upbringing into music in general, and just it's awesome.
Wow, yeah. I mean, then there's like Iron Maiden and Motorhead and Angel Witch. Once it got into metal, then I would go to Slip Disc Records and get all that stuff. I remember the first time I was in this, the first time I saw the back of Sodom in the Sign of Evil when they had that shitty old corpse paint on. I'm like, holy shit, this looks interesting. Or Destruction, Sentence of Death, when they're like putting on as many spikes as possible on the front cover, even though they practically look like they're gonna fall over. And so all that old prototypical black metal, Venom, Merciful Fate, that was all, real huge with me too.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't know, a lot of shit back then.
Awesome. Well, hell yeah. Just to go back to the bands that you're in. Tales of Etherion. Is there
What
anything
is that?
you I'm sorry.
I'm not sure what that is.
Oh, huh. That's
Yeah, you
got
mentioned that before.
and completely false information. Never believe everything you read on the internet, I guess, because it's
Well,
saying here that you're the bass player for Tales of Etherion.
Well, wait. Who else is supposed to be in the band? So
I'm not sure. It's got. I can't even click the link to do anything with it, but it says from 2002 to present that you're in this band. So maybe.
No, I have not been in some band I never heard of for 20
Never mind then. Never mind. About the Storm Breeders of Death.
Well, yeah, that was something this year. That's
cool.
The only way you're going to hear SOD with the original guitar and bass live.
Right.
So that was that. And I mean, it doesn't have much to do with vinyl. It's just doing stuff from a vinyl record that was pretty popular. But
Sure.
yeah, that's
And
got
dude,
me.
yeah.
Yeah, Scott's son, Revel on drums, who killed it in Milwaukee, and
That's
Jamie from Hatebreed, thus the breed.
That's
But
awesome.
yeah, and I was just having a good time
Yeah.
playing good songs people wanted to keep hearing. So
Well, that's awesome. Again, just real quick, a couple years back, I went to the Metal and Beerfest in Philadelphia, and I believe you were there as a brewer.
yeah, a couple of times. It's been more than a couple of years, probably, but yeah, a couple of times I was there representing. First, it was McKellar, and then God, what was the name of the brew? Droid Theory, right? Because they
Yeah.
had
okay.
Annie. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, any excuse to get in free, right?
Sure.
Yeah. No.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Nick, do you have anything? Like, I don't want to look like an idiot anymore.
No, you're good. You're good. You hammered all the questions. I think the really thing I wanted to ask was the brutal truth thing, but yeah, we don't want to take up any more of your time, Danny. Thank you so much for coming out and talking vinyl with us today. We do really appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'm glad.
Dude,
And
Danny, yeah. This has been an honor to have you on the show, Danny. Absolutely. Thank you very
well,
much for taking the time to do this.
you're very
And
welcome.
is there anything else you would like to add before we wrap things up?
I can't think of anything in particular. I just think it's all I was going to say was just it's cool that people still care about vinyl because, of records that are recorded analog and mastered like that have a certain warmth that CDs and certainly MP3s don't have. And, when you hear a nice, thick, old sounding record, like, let's say fucking Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, just, anything, I'm just picking one. Um, just Vinyl just has a certain frequency range that just really can't be duplicated. So it's really cool that people still care about it and makes me feel like shit out of a turntable. But I'm lazy too. But
Hey,
yeah,
that's all
man.
right.
Thanks for having me, and you know where to get me.
All right. All right. Well, again, Danny, thank you very much for taking
You're
time
very
out to do
welcome.
this. And
Yeah. Thank you everybody for watching. We will see you all next week.
all right.
Yep.
See you guys.
All right. See you guys.
Final thing,